Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Those are some day 2 morning cheers. I get that. I understand that. I'm with you. That was a lot of fun last night. Let's try it one more time. How we all doing? Thank you. I appreciate you indulging me. Before we get started, you heard me say this a couple times, so I just want to reinforce, this is a workshop-style session. At different points, we will be asking you to talk to each other, and at some points, we'll even ask you to talk to us a little bit. So we are going to introduce ourselves to begin. I'm glad y'all are enjoying day 2 of ClioCon so far.
Not if you've been hydrating enough. Nobody's nodding. So hydrate. Make sure you get that water, okay? Welcome to our workshop, Mastering Difficult Conversations. I'd like to start by introducing you to my friend and colleague, Carrie. Carrie leads learning and development at Clio. He and I have done a number of talks together. We work well together. We love hanging out together. And in the past year, I've learned that Carrie really enjoys helping teams, helping people, helping organizations reach their full potential. He does that by listening and then creating strategies around enablement for fast-paced teams. He's given a number of talks, both about learning and leadership to all kinds of industries and professionals. And during his downtime, you can find him hiking with his partner and his 2 kids, or hosting the podcast, How Do You Learn To? And being passionately mediocre with pickup basketball. Those are his words, not mine.
And this is my friend Maya. She leads the social purpose portfolio at Clio. And so what that means is her job is to enhance and push forward Clio's social justice mission to transform the legal experience for all. And she does this through varied social programming. So you can think of giving efforts like product, profit, and people time donations. It's a really big portfolio, and she does it very well. Couple things you should know about Maya. She's a bilingual Montrealer, so she does enjoy speaking French. If you speak French, come speak French to Maya. She's also spoken at some very large conferences for companies like Amazon and LinkedIn, and she often facilitates a lot of education around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just generally how to be a better human being. She's really good at that as well. A couple things I've learned about Maya is that she is a nerdy extrovert, or a nerdtrovert, as I like to call her. She brings a lot of empathy and a lot of real-world context to conversations, and she loves to have conversations, in English or French, about vinyl records, wine, and especially the importance of hydrating. If you had been here for pre-reg, you saw Maya wandering around with earrings that were tiny Evian bottles. She's really into hydrating.
Don't laugh on the mic.
Okay, so what are we actually here to talk about today? Law is inherently adversarial. No news there. We all know that, right? Here's the thing. When we work in an inherently adversarial space, sometimes we move into difficult conversations and we keep that I have to win this conversation mentality. And that's not true of all conversations. The thing we want to pose to you today is that if you have a difficult conversation and you focus on listening and understanding the other person's point of view better, you will get better outcomes than if you try to win conversation or if you try and de-escalate the other person. My job here is to make sure that you feel not upset. So that's what I'm going to work on. So that's what we're going to go through today.
So let's take a look at our time together today. We're going to level set on what makes for a difficult conversation. Then it's important to look at social identities or dimensions of diversity, and how they affect how we can interact with one another.
Once we understand what pushes the buttons of our various social identities, those things that make us who we are, we can dive into how we can move from using filtered listening, which is something we do every day, we'll explain that more later, into empathic listening, which gets us closer to understanding the other person's point of view. Then we can leverage some excellent techniques like silence, presence, and reflection in order to really help the other person feel like we understand what they're going through. And by doing that, we can get much better outcomes with our difficult conversation. That's our goal. By the end of this hour, I want you to feel more comfortable than you do now stepping into difficult conversations with your peers, with your clients, with your family members, with that cranky barista, with any of those people.
So what are difficult conversations really? A difficult conversation can be defined as a type of conversation that has three main characteristics that I'm sure you're all familiar with. Those being high stakes, emotionally charged, and having multiple perspectives. So if you've worked in any corporate work setting, you know they can show up during performance assessments, salary discussions and negotiations, team meetings, decision-making, promotion decisions, as well as formal and informal feedback. So let's talk about where difficult conversations often show up in your world. While the types of conversations you're having vary, there are some key moments where they tend to surface. Feel free to nod enthusiastically if this non-lawyer is getting these right, okay? So handling client expectations. Clients often come in with a specific outcome in mind, and balancing those expectations with legal realities can create high-stakes, emotionally charged conversations. Don't forget, this case is often the worst thing that has ever happened to your client, so they're already showing up heightened or a little charged. Client billing disputes, and all of these are on the little handout that we've got for you there. Whether it's about fee structures or just perceptions in value, discussing money with clients or anyone really can quickly escalate, especially when there's confusion or frustration on either side. Disagreements over case strategy. So within your teams, disagreements about the case strategy are inevitable, I imagine. These moments often involve multiple perspectives and can get heated when everyone is passionate about the right path forward. Negotiation breakdowns. Negotiations can also or can often lead to tension, especially when talks break down, right? It's a high stakes moment where emotions can run high, and finding common ground is critical for resolution. Interpersonal conflicts within legal teams. High-pressure environments can also lead to conflicts between colleagues, especially during stressful times like trials or major deadlines. These conversations can often require tact, listening, and understanding to keep the team moving forward. And client communication on case progress, finally communicating with our clients, especially when it's slower maybe or different from what they expect, can lead to difficult conversations. So here, empathy and transparency become key to maintaining trust. Unless I'm mistaken, having emotional conversations 101 is not a core class we need to take or even have access to during law school.
It should be, right?
It should be.
It should be. Now, I also want to be clear that there's a difference between a difficult conversation and a toxic conversation. Okay? My first professional job at a school was working as a customer service rep for a major investment firm up in Canada. We have those in Canada, by the way. And within a year, there was a major recession. Would you like to hear about some toxic conversations that I had? I was sworn at. I was called names. I had one dude threaten to drive to the office and beat me up. That is a thing that happened. I was blamed for things that I possibly couldn't be responsible for as literally the lowest person in the entire firm. If someone is disrespectful, if someone is threatening, even if somebody is unable to intake the other person's point of view or expertise, then you're bordering on a toxic conversation. So in a difficult conversation, we have a baseline of respect. It's emotionally charged, but it's safe. We can understand the other. A toxic conversation, disrespect, aggressive, potentially unsafe, unable to understand the other. Okay? There are people whose job it is to handle toxic conversations. I think of police negotiators. I think of counselors. But a lot of times it's not our job. What we used to do in the call center, if somebody was getting abusive or threatening or swearing, we had a 3-strike rule. And then we would say, I'm sorry, this is not a good time for us to have this conversation. I'd like to continue it. Either we would hang up on them if it was really bad and we had to, or we would get the number and we'd call them back the next day. A toxic conversation will never go anywhere. A difficult conversation has the potential of being resolved in a way that both people find amenable. So all that to say is, if you're in a toxic conversation, don't pursue it. Come back to it later. It may still be a difficult conversation, but you might be able to manage it.
So when we enter into difficult conversations, we bring with us a whole set of beliefs, experiences, attitudes, all shaped by our social identities, whether that's our education, our profession, or cultural background. These identities are like lenses that color how we see and interpret what's being said. But sometimes, instead of helping us understand the situation, these lenses can put us into tension with the subject or the person in front of us. They might cause us to make assumptions, feel defensive, or even interpret the other person's words through our own biases. In those moments, tensions build because we're not just reacting to what's being said, but to our own experiences and beliefs, which can obviously skew how we engage. Being aware of this is the first step toward overcoming those barriers, helping us listen more empathically and navigate tough conversations more effectively. When we think of diversity, more often than not, we're thinking about visible diversity. For example, ethnicity, perceived gender identity. The diversity wheel, or maybe you know the iceberg, where you have above the water, what's visible to the eye, below the surface, things that we can't see. It represents the many layers or ways that we live our lives, the dimensions that are at the root of what makes us who we are in terms of background, belief system, and values. The big 8, and those are also listed on your paper there, socially constructed identities are race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, religion, spirituality, nationality, and socioeconomic status. Social identity is at the root of how we individuals experience the world, and there are so many layers that are not listed here. We like to start sessions with social identities or dimensions of diversity because it absolutely plays a part in how we interact with one another, how we perceive conversations, and how we can end up in tension with one another. So throughout our workshop, and in life in general, I ask you to think about, why am I having this reaction? Are my social identities getting in the way here? How am I making this about me?
Okay, let's summarize a little bit of what we've learned so far. May I have the clicker?
Yes.
Thank you. We know that difficult conversations are a fact of life. Yes? All right. Love it. I heard you. It's great. We know that our social identities make it harder for us to navigate difficult conversations because if we get those buttons pushed, we get defensive. Now, I think it's time we actually look at an example of a difficult conversation. I need 10 people to come up here and do some role play. I'm just joking. I'm not going to do that to you. Would you rather? Well, we could do that, or we could watch a video. Who wants to watch the video? Okay, we'll watch the video. That sounds like a good idea.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way.
Okay. Quick poll. Who thinks he had a good idea? See some hands. I worry if your hand is not up. I do think that he had a good idea. Pull the nail out of your forehead. Maybe that'll stop your sweaters from getting snagged. Who's to say? Real quick, I'd love someone to shout to me here. Why didn't she accept that obviously good idea? Because she wanted to be validated. We're getting there. We're getting there. She wanted to be validated, and she didn't feel validated because she didn't feel as though he understood her problem. How many of you have ever been in a situation with a client where you're like, clearly the right way forward is this, and they're like, no. That hand shot up. I see you. That's because oftentimes they don't feel like you fully understand the problem. They will often say things like, no, you don't understand. So, if you don't feel understood, it is really hard for you to take advice from that person, because how could that advice work if they don't understand you? She didn't think he had a fulsome view of her problem. We often talk about something called active listening. Okay, active listening is this idea that if you show somebody you're engaged in the conversation, they're going to feel understood and they'll be more amenable to you. Has anybody ever had someone active listen so hard that you feel like they're not listening to you? They're like, yeah. I've had that. I want to up-level your active listening. I want to move you from what's called filtered listening, which is something we do every day using our social identities, to something called empathic listening, which is a new discipline. Let me talk through what these two things are. So imagine on the top there, we have Jesse. On the bottom, we have Blake. Now, Jesse has a lot of things that are important to them that they think Blake needs to know about. So they tell Blake these things. Often what happens is with our social identities, with our experience, with our expertise, with our feelings, with our opinions, we filter all of the things that Jesse has to say. And by the time they make their way to Blake, all that gets there is what's important to Blake. Again, shout it out. Can anyone identify a problem with this way of listening? What might happen in that conversation? Sorry, just a little bit louder. I'm a drummer, so I can't hear. Nothing.
Nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen. Yeah, they're not going to get anywhere. Blake is going to recenter themselves in the conversation. It's like the one-upper, right? Hey, I went to Maui for a week. I once went to Maui for 4 weeks. We don't like the one-upper, but that's what filtered listening is. Or Blake is going to respond thoughtfully, but only about the things they care about, and Jesse's like, well, what about these other things? Okay? Can I do a little example for you? All right. Maya, would you be my boss?
Yes.
Oh, you've waited for this. Okay. Maya, I am so frustrated. I have been working nights and weekends on this thing. Nobody has recognized it. Nobody seems to care. I am burning myself out for exactly no reason.
But remember, I shouted you out in Slack. I even sent you a thank you card.
Is that going to work? No. Maya is on the defensive, right? Even if Maya is correct, even if those things are true, let's assume they're true, what's going to happen, what's happening is Maya is trying to argue me out of my feelings. That never, ever worked. I'm sorry, law professionals, you cannot argue someone out of their feelings. I'm really sorry to break it to you. It doesn't work. Let's talk a little bit about what empathic listening is. So again, here we have Jesse. Jesse has all the cool things, all the important things that they need to tell Blake. This time, Blake really hears them. I mean, really hears them. They don't put all of their experiences and things in the middle. They actually intake it all. Then, having understood it and made Jesse feel like they're understood, they can take all the cool things that Jesse said, filter them through their experiences and their opinions and their identities and their expertise, and then work together. That's empathic listening. Can I give you an example of what that looks like? Let's do the same thing. Maya, I'm so frustrated. I've been working nights and weekends on this thing for 4 weeks. Nobody cares. I feel totally unrecognized.
Carrie, it really makes me sad to hear that you feel that way. I'm so glad you brought it up to me. Can you tell me a little bit more about the ways you're feeling overlooked?
Pause there because, we're not going to get into a whole thing right now. But that is the first step into making this work. Maya can still come back to the fact that she sent me a card, to the fact that she has shouted me out in Slack or whatever your team channel is. That can all happen. But first, she's working to make me feel understood. What she might elicit from that question is the fact that I also am afraid I'm doing poor performance because I'm so burned out, and I really want her to reassure me that the work I've done is actually good. It hasn't been compromised. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with empathic and filtered listening is how it relates to issue spotting. If you were listening to me talk about filtered listening, you were like, gee, that sounds a lot like issue spotting. You're absolutely correct. It is like issue spotting. And issue spotting is an incredibly important practice. There's a reason lawyers are taught to do it. But if you are issue spotting at the expense of making your client feel underheard, you're going to find it really difficult to align on strategy later, no matter how right you are. Remember, it's not about being right, it's about making people feel like they're understood. If you can listen, make that person feel fully understood before you say, here are the issues, here's the strategy, here's what I want to do, here's what I'm going to charge you, you will have a much better chance of getting agreement and alignment because that person feels understood. Does that seem sensible so far? Okay. Thank you for coming. No, we should probably teach you how to do that, right? Okay, let's do that. How do you do this? Our 3 simple practices. We have silence, we have presence, reflection. These are listed on the sheet in front of you, but if you want to make some notes on the back about these, feel free. And by the way, if you're like, I've been being quiet since I was in grade 1. I know how to be quiet. I've been showing up to things. I know how to be present. If these feel like human lessons, that's not uncommon. Quick story, a few years ago while I was being mediocre at pickup basketball, I got some plantar fasciitis in my foot. If anyone's ever had plantar, sucks. Do not recommend. I had to go to a specialist, and what they had me do was literally walk up and down a hallway, and they watched me walk. And then they were like, I can see why you have plantar. You don't walk right. I'm like, I've been doing it for 35 years. I feel like I've got it pretty much down. No, they actually had to teach me how to re-walk. There are practices that we learned early on that we thought were okay that we actually need to improve later in life. It's not about being a bad human. It's about becoming an even better human. So I say all that by way of saying is we need to learn to be quiet. There's this great indigenous proverb that goes, listen or your tongue will make you deaf. So when we're listening, we're going to seek first to understand the other person, then we're going to make ourselves understood. And listening, silence can be really, really hard. When you're in a high-stakes conversation, you are having those social identities crop up and say, hey, we're threatened. We need to get defensive here. You want to own the conversation. You want to win the conversation. You feel attacked. It's so important to remember that this is not about you. So we're going to do a little exercise. Here's what's going to happen. I do need you to find a partner. If not a partner, you can go in a trio. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. What I want you to do is first partner is going to tell the second partner about a problem they're having. They're going to spend 2 minutes doing that. Listener, you are not allowed to say a word. Understood? You all hate me right now, and that's okay. I can accept that. You are not allowed to say a word for the 2 minutes. Then I will have you flip and do the same thing, and then we'll do a bit of a debrief together. So go ahead, find a partner. I'll give you a minute to settle. I'll let you know when the 2 minutes starts, okay? Go ahead, find yourself a partner if you don't have one already. Get my trusty phone going here. All right. Now I need everyone to be a listener. Real quick, and I need honesty. I require honesty. How many people broke the silence? Nobody.
Well done.
Oh, okay, no, I see hands. Thank you for being honest. Real quick, when you were speaking, can anyone describe what it was like to have somebody not say a word, to just give you all that room to speak? What were some feelings you had as that was happening? It was hard. As the speaker, it was a little uncomfortable? Okay, good to know. Anything else? Affirming. Yeah.
Someone just look at you and yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. And what are some words to describe how you felt as the listener? Like, why was it hard to hold that silence? Want to fix it? Yeah? Sorry, from the back I heard something?
The inability to ask clarifying questions.
Yeah, you want more information, right? But remember, you want more information, and we can get to that. We can get to that. Silence is incredibly powerful. It's important. Here's the good news. I am not asking you to just sit there saying nothing forever. That is just the first technique. We in difficult conversations, in awkward conversations, we are predisposed to want to talk more because we want to control the conversation. So the first step is just practicing that silence. The second step is to practice what we call presence. You alluded to it earlier with where was my nodder? Were you nodding? Yes, nodding. That's one way you can be silent but still evoke presence. The best way to evoke presence, however, is to act like a cow. I should explain that. How many people have ever been face to face with a cow? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about, right?
The people.
They're dialed in. The facial expression is slack. The facial expression is slack. They just kind of like look right at you. They're kind of chewing their cud. And I say this like it's funny, haha, act like a cow. But it's actually a really good reminder to use what we call cow face to create presence. You're dialed in. You're looking right at them. Your face is a little slack. You're not showing frustration or boredom. We all know that person on the virtual call who like their camera is here, but their main screen is here, so they spend the whole call talking to you like this. That's not good presence. Look in the camera. Have that cow face. You can evoke presence and show people you're present without saying a word, just by nodding, just by using your body language. I bet there were a few people in this room who, as you were talking, as the person was telling their problem, you like scooched your chair a little bit to face them more square on. That's good. Do those kinds of things. So if we're silent and we're evoking presence within our silence, now we can start using a couple of those active listening techniques. Words like I see, really, all these words you see coming up on the screen right now. Now you want to use the right ones, Like if someone's like, yeah, my dad fell down the stairs, he's in the hospital, and you're like, interesting. You want to use the right ones. So like pick, but that's a good way, and like short and sweet. Let them know you're there. This is all about presence, right? Nodding, small listening attenders, good facial expression, eye contact, especially on virtual calls. Don't make eye contact with the screen, make eye contact with the camera to let them know you're there. So we're silent, we're showing our presence. There's one last technique I want to walk you through, and I would say this is the most important one. It's called reflection. In addition to being more aware of your listening and your presence, you can use a technique called reflection to do two things. You can stay engaged, and you can also demonstrate to the other person that you're paying deep attention to them. The idea behind reflection is that you are acting as a mirror. You are repeating back the things that the other person has said to you without... Have you ever had... Do y'all know... If I say some people are advice smugglers, do you know what I mean when I say that? Yeah. We all have that person who's like, oh, that's a tough problem. Have you ever thought of insert thing I want you to do right now? That's advice smuggling. That's not reflection. The whole goal here is to make the other person feel heard by telling them, by showing them that you've listened to them. Now, there's two ways we can use reflection. There's close reflection, which is really helpful to confirm sequences or accuracy. Think of like how a server repeats an order. Yeah, I'll have the burger with sweet potato fries and a Coke Zero on the side. Got it. Burger, sweet potato fries, Coke Zero on the side. Example, Maya, could you give me directions from your place to the supermarket, please?
So as soon as you step outside, you take a left to the corner, you take another left on Mount Royal, and it's right there on your right.
So as soon as I head outside, I take a left on the corner, take another left on Mount Royal, and it'll be immediately on my right.
Got it.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. That's close reflection. Distanced reflection is more common and more powerful. We're going to use similar words, often fewer words, and in a different sequence to make sure people are aware that we heard them correctly. It's really important to use the right one at the right time. Maya, could you describe a problem you're having right now, please?
I'm having frustration with my internet provider. They keep charging me for the wrong services. I'm on the phone with them every week. It's super frustrating.
So you're having trouble with your ISP. They keep charging you for services you're not using, and you're on the phone with them every week.
Yeah.
Did I add anything to that conversation? No. What if I said something like, that is so frustrating when you're getting charged for stuff you don't need and you're having to pour time into that experience. That's incredibly frustrating. I see where you're coming from.
Thanks.
All the information she gave me, but rephrased, reoriented, and it also accessed what she didn't say. It's that she was frustrated. I perceived that and I reflected it back to her. So distanced reflection is an incredibly powerful tool to help people feel heard. Ask any Cleon here at CleoCon who has ever had a meeting with me. Have you ever heard Carrie say, so what I'm hearing you say is? I say it like 6 times a day, and it is an incredibly powerful tool. I cannot recommend it enough. So let's talk a little bit about what we've covered here. We started by talking about our social identities, and then we realized that we were stepping on our partner's slide. So we handed the clicker back to her so she could take her slide forward.
When we manage our reactions and practice empathic listening, we're more likely to make the other person feel heard and get a positive outcome. We do this by being silent and present, like our lovely cow friend here. And we can use reflection to help make that person feel assured, we've heard them, and which will help this person from escalating. So let's try this again. Let's do the same exercise with the same people. I'll give you about 5 minutes. That way we have some time for Q&A. I want you to describe the same problem to the other person. This time I want you to leverage silence, presence, and especially reflection. And let's see what that does. I'm going to ask you to do the timing for me and do the calling out for me. So again, same thing, but you're using the tools that you just learned. And let's give that a try. All right, go ahead.
2 minutes starts now.
All right, let's come back. Let's come back from those conversations. Now you're solving each other's problems. It's great. Come back to me. Come back to me.
I love it. They're having great conversations.
Amazing.
I mean, how can we be upset, right?
Okay, team. All right, team. Thank you. Thank you. Exchange those LinkedIn numbers and chat later. This is great.
Follow each other on the TikToks if that's your thing. Whatever it is.
So how did you feel when you heard someone reflect back your problem in their own words? Felt heard?
That's my guy.
Felt heard? Some people still feeling heard over here. Good. Good. It helped me feel regulated. I like that a lot. Just kind of grounding. Yeah. Felt supported.
Yeah.
I felt like this person was really present. They really get it. I wanted to keep talking and express my concerns more. This is wonderful. Okay. And listeners on the receiving end, how did you feel when you reflected the problem back to the person?
Yes.
I think it felt a little frustrating because you wanted to kind of see more. When you were telling us.
That's such an excellent point. It felt frustrating because you want to say more, and there's probably somewhere in your identity. Would I be right in thinking that you have a bit of a helper identity? Yeah. We want to solve right away, right? And so when we take that extra step to just stop and reflect and make them heard first, we're going to help them so much more because they're going to be on side with us. Really good job digging into that.
Are you going to show us how to transition into solutions?
Are you asking me to tell you legal advice to give? Because I don't think you want that.
I saw a hand up at the back.
I was asking more questions based upon what I was told. Reiterating what I was told, but doing it in a question, to get more information on that topic or that subject, I guess, the best way to put it.
So as a listener, you felt the opportunity to ask questions that were more relevant and asking it in a way that was showing you were hearing them. Is that a good framing of? Yeah. And then again, that person feels even more heard. Oh, this question is digging into what I've just shared. I can share more. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I have a challenge that I'm not patient enough. So I tend to cut people off because I want to keep moving the conversation forward. How do you address?
You tend to cut people off because you want to move the conversation forward. Is that a recap of what you said? Okay, that's fair. We could maybe dig in. Yeah, go ahead.
So my partner grew up in a small country town, and her family are notoriously slow talkers. So like they start a story, they'll be like, it was 1987. I was wearing my my blue fleece. I'm like, get to the point. And I was quite rude to them when I joined the family. I'll be perfectly honest, because I was doing the active listening thing, like the overactive active listening. So yeah, finding that space to breathe, not get ahead of the story, and it feels like you're adding so much time, but when you reflect things back to them, they don't tell the same thing again because they feel heard. And so that might be something that you can center yourself in, is like, I'm taking a little extra time, but then I won't have to go through this again. That's how I got over it anyway.
So maybe it seems like there's good chats about to happen. So maybe we can get a mic ready to pass around, and move into Q&A. So Carrie, I'll let you lead us into that.
So do we have our mic runner? Sorry, it's very hard to see.
Okay.
Awesome. So
See a hand up here.
throw your hands way up in the air. Wave them like you just
Hands
don't
up
care.
here.
We got one over here. We're going to make you walk all the way across.
Thank you so much. This is great. So here's my situation. Like I'm good with the empathetic listening, the filter, be silent, be present. It looks like the reflection part. It's where I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
And so in being empathic and listening, and people, trust me, and I honestly, authentically understand where they're coming. I'm able to do those 8, go through that. But then when we're discussing like possible solutions or next steps, then I've had a couple of situations that I've come across like getting their hopes up somehow. And I'm like, okay, so I need to work on that, but I don't know if you have any feedback or tips for that part.
So when you get to the reflection piece, and Carrie mentioned like that, what I'm hearing you say is it's kind of just a good prompt to be like, okay, this is the moment where I'm reflecting back what I understand. And what I find works well for me, I do this especially in my relationship with my partner, and I think it works for friendships and all kinds of relationships, is what would be helpful for you right now? Do you want a solution, or do you want to just get it all off your chest? And kind of like saying, I'm ready to be that person you need right now. And that I've found has led to less difficult conversations and just more healthy conversations.
Thank you so much. And I think I share my feelings with kind of the helper and getting to solutions. Really,
Yeah, I'm the same.
Like I need to fix this, and give you the solution. And so I think that's the part. Thank you.
Sometimes you need to let them have the nail in their head until you until you say, I hear you. And then, there's just
Let's talk about that nail.
Did you want to add anything to that, Karen?
No, and
Put your hand up if you
like this is perhaps a little more cutthroat, but what I'm hearing you say is, clearly it's not legally binding, but it is a good way to make sure, like, okay, so we agree this is what we're talking about. Now we can move forward. You know what I mean? Because when you don't have that like agreement on the table to say like, okay, here's all the things we covered, here's all the things we talked about, and then of course you can move into like clarifying questions from there, because you'll get people circling back to the original issue, and that's not helpful. But yeah, what Maya said as well is knowing what they need in that moment and discerning that can be really helpful. Thank you for that question. Do we have another one out there?
Yeah, this just goes more towards asking people what they need. So when we start having that conversation, we do that in my house, but at work I've started doing that with the staff as well, because I deal mostly with managers. So when they come to me, are you looking for validation of what you want to do? Are you looking for my opinion? And we call that ask holery in my house, where you ask my opinion and then do whatever you want. But like, these are all really important things, because I don't know what somebody wants from me when they come into the office. I want to just have that conversation and not get my feedback. Do you want my opinion? Do you want me to solve it for you? Do you want me to tell you how I would do it? And then we go through all those steps as well. Then I at least know what's expected of me as the listener.
That's great.
Love that.
That's great tips. Thank you. There was a hand up here in the front as well. The front here.
And sorry, people in the back, we have incredibly bright spotlights right in our eyes, so it is a little hard to see you.
Wanted to know, how do you know when it's time to transition from reflection into the next part of a conversation? Do I just put on a timer for 2 minutes and then...
Yes. Or if they're really annoying, 1 minute. No, so going back to that question, though, like what I'm hearing you say is, the whole point is making sure that someone feels heard completely. And so when you get to that point of like, what I'm hearing you say is, you're not sure when the appropriate time is to transition from reflection into actual problem solving or further questions. If you say, yes, that's exactly it. Now, okay, we've got agreement. This is what you said. I heard you fully. Now we can move into the next phase, whether it's more questions, solutioning, sympathy, whatever that is. That's really the power of that statement and why I suggest it. Does that answer your question? Awesome.
My question over here, sorry.
Hello.
Is how do you start a difficult conversation? So say like you were trying to fire one, or instead of actually listening to them or them coming to you to complain or talk about things.
I apologize. I'm sorry. My ears are failing me. Would you be able to speak up just a little bit? I was missing a couple words there.
No, that's totally fine. Sorry. So I was wondering how you start a difficult conversation. So say you have like a complaint about another employee and you need to engage with that other employee to tell them what's going wrong, those kind of things. So instead of like listening to them, I guess in the beginning, how do you start a difficult conversation of like firing or sometimes I tend to be a little bit of a pushover. And so by the end of the conversation, you're like, what did we just accomplish? Nothing. So that's hard.
Yeah, no, great question. How do you start a difficult conversation? Because sometimes we just have to. We both have feedback on this, I think. I'm
way too excited to be.
That's why I'm like, okay, I'll go first. I think a lot of the time we don't want bad news to be sugar-coated, but because we're kind and thoughtful, we're wanting to sugarcoat and ease you in. But sometimes like, I've got some rough news. Are you in a space where you feel like we can maybe have a difficult conversation, and just kind of saying the thing, and you're almost asking for consent to move forward, and that psychologically also just calms someone down where they're like, I've now said this is okay. The same way for giving feedback, if it's just good old regular feedback with a colleague, an employee, how do you prefer to receive feedback? Do you prefer it via email? Do you prefer it verbally, and kind of getting ahead of the difficult conversation and finding out how people like to receive information, and then moving into it pretty straightforwardly, but having that opportunity, like, let me know if at the end you want to sit and chat about this more, or if you'd prefer some space. Giving people options is also a great way to kind of limit the pain. And then let's hear what Carrie has to say.
We didn't plan this, but it actually flows together really well.
Good.
So once you've gotten the permission, once like they've agreed to go into that, what I find is really helpful is a framework called the SBI. S as in Sierra, B as in Bravo, I as in India model. I'll go over it really quick, but I encourage you to look it up online because you can find some really good thought on this. So describe the situation. Instead of saying you always or you never, describe a specific time and place where a thing happened. Behavior, what was the thing that the person did? Again, specific, you're not being broad, you're right within that time and place. What happened? And what was the impact? Describe why you're telling this person about this thing. So don't just be like, you always leave the refrigerator door open, which is not something my wife said to me last week, I promise you. But you would say, hey, last night I came downstairs and the refrigerator door was open and the ice had all coagulated in the freezer drawer. Situation, specific time and place. Behavior, what is the thing you did? I actually should have said I left it because I did leave the fridge door open, let's be honest. And then impact, why is it important that I tell you? And what usually happens when you can use SBI is people don't feel attacked. They don't feel like it's their character being attacked, but they know it's a specific thing they're talking about, and they start with a good understanding of why you brought it up.
Got about 2 minutes. I got a question over here.
Hands. And I don't know if we can stay late in the room doing Q&A, but I think we can hang out and chat for a bit afterwards. So probably time for one more.
So as a supervisor, this is kind of the working yourself into the conversation. As a supervisor, I'll often have employees come to me that are on a peer-to-peer level.
Yep.
And one is reporting or tattling, right, on the other that...
Snitching, is that where
there you go.
They're snitching, yeah.
Their colleague maybe isn't doing things the way they should.
Yep.
So I always struggle on how to interject myself into that conversation, even though I should be able to just do it directly and say, this is what I'm hearing. But then it puts the employee that's reporting the issue in a very difficult position because the one that is being snitched on is going to know immediately who has shared that information. So maybe not so much the conversation, but how you work yourself into that or through a situation that's similar to that.
So I'm going to start by operating from an ideal world scenario, and then I'm going to bring it to the real world. Ideal, we should never get third-hand feedback.
Yeah.
One of the principles actually that Clio runs on internally, but I as a leader have always believed in, is when I sit down to do your performance review, there are no surprises. There is nothing you haven't heard before. And ideally, so if I had one of my direct reports come to me and say, hey, you know, Maya's messing up, she did this, 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 and this, and this, and it's had that, and that impact, my first question to that person is, have you told Maya? And generally, if the answer is no, I would say, what do we need to do to get that conversation happening between the two of you? Because it's no good, because it's not fair to Maya either for me to be like, so-and-so, what's your name, sir? Ben said all these awful things about you. You did this? And she's like, well, no, I did that and that and that. Ben's off his rocker. It's not fair to anybody. Now, I recognize that there are also times when we can't do that. Either there's discomfort, there's a power imbalance, things like that. So usually what we want to do if we can't get people talking directly to each other is we make sure that we document everything. We have that conversation as best we can, but we usually can't push it too far to the point of like performance management unless it's really egregious. So my first principle in that case, Ben, would always be get them talking to each other. If there needs to be a mediator, it's ideal if it's not you, a neutral third party would be better. But if it has to be you, that's okay. But get them talking to each other, get them aligning. And if not, just document everything, be as consistent as you can and go from there. But ideally, all of our people are equipped to have difficult conversations. They know how to do this stuff and they feel psychologically safe with each other to be able to do that. Anything you'd add to that answer?
No, I think that's great. I was going to say we are at time and want to be very mindful of you, getting food. But I also, because I think I know the agenda by heart, know that we have this room. So if you do want to stay back, we could hang out for another 5 or 10 minutes. But I did want to thank you so much for your attention and your conversations. Thank you.